Touchdowns are some of the most exciting plays in football, and what a better way to increase that excitement than placing a wager on some of your favorite players to find the end zone and hitting on that prop. Well, here at DFSG Plus, we've got a show dedicated specifically to touchdown props. And if you give me just a second, right after this intro, we'll get into a handful of players that I like to find pay dirt in Week 6. Welcome back to another edition of the Touchdown Prop Show here on the DFSG Plus channel. I'm your host each and every week. My name is Axton Harding. You can find me on Twitter at AxmanIDP. Feel free to go ahead and follow me there. Reach out to me with questions, opinions, whatever you might like. I'm always willing to chat over there. But this show is specifically dedicated to touchdown props. If you've been here before, you know how this goes. We lay out a number of guys and make a case for these players each and every week. It's up to you guys. If any of my cases or angles speak to you, feel free to follow or tail any one of these props, or do with it what you like. Feel free to throw your favorite touchdown props down in the comments as well, and let's see if we can cash in together. So, without further ado, let's jump into today's slate, as we'll call it for today. We've got a number of guys, and specifically targeting at the tight end position this week. I like a lot of matchups for some tight ends this week. But let's jump right into it. Right off the top, we've got Tetairoa McMillan for an anytime touchdown. Comes in at plus 140 against the Dallas Cowboys this week. He draws a great matchup. This is an outstanding matchup for opposing wide receivers. Carolina comes in playing a battered Dallas defense this week, who's given up 4 wide receiver touchdowns over the last 2 weeks and 10 wide receiver touchdowns over the last 4 weeks, averaging almost or over 2 touchdowns per game to the position. So this is already a generous defense coming into the matchup, already drawing a favorable matchup for Tetairoa McMillan. They also give up the most yardage over the last month as well to opposing wide receivers, and the Panthers should be able to move the ball down the field in this one, and I'd be willing to bet that that Dallas centers their focus on containing Rico Dowdle after a 240-yard game last week. And following that game, he started running his mouth to the Dallas Cowboys, letting them know that they ought to buckle up for this Week 6 matchup. There's a revenge game narrative there with Rico Dowdle going back to Dallas, but oftentimes you don't necessarily see players running their mouth before they go into the games like this. So I don't know. We'll have to see what Dallas has in store for Rico Dowdle, but I would say that their focus is going to be to contain him and make Bryce Young beat them through the air, because the fact of the matter is that this team is not really much of anything without the run game kind of operating and helping them kind of grind the middle of the field. It's really hard for this team to keep up in the passing game. They just haven't had quite the firepower to be able to stay in games in that way. Now, whenever the run game is working great, the pass game works fine too. But nonetheless, in this matchup, I don't think that Tetairoa McMillan is going to be the primary focus, and even if he is, he's talented enough. I think he can overcome some of the Dallas defenders who are going to be playing or guarding him this week. McMillan specifically, aside from Week 2 where Hunter Renfrow garnered 5 red zone targets, Tetairoa McMillan actually leads the team in red zone targets outside of that game for the rest of the season for Carolina. He just hasn't really been able to convert. He hasn't had a touchdown so far this season, but this is a prime opportunity. You're not going to get a much better matchup here. He's got 3 catches on 5 targets inside the 20, and so like I'm saying, against a vulnerable Dallas defense, if there was going to be a week for Tetairoa McMillan to break that seal and finally find pay dirt this season, it's going to be this week against the Dallas Cowboys. And at plus 140, I like the odds here for a Tetairoa McMillan touchdown against a vulnerable Dallas defense. Next on the slate, we've got David Njoku for an anytime touchdown, coming in at a nice plus 475 against the Pittsburgh Steelers this week. The price really feels wrong on this. You get nearly 5 times your cash for a David Njoku touchdown for a tight end who's emerging as the clear favorite for a rookie quarterback in Dylan Gabriel. Rookie quarterbacks in general coming into the NFL just kind of like to lean on their tight ends. They're the big targets who kind of find themselves in the middle of the field, short area kind of targets that they can just, if they don't feel comfortable about slinging one downfield, they often will just kind of go to either the running back in a dump off, or they'll hit the tight end in the middle of the field and just try to gain some yardage that way. Seems like David Njoku has been Gabriel's favorite, where Joe Flacco kind of preferred Harold Fannin. It's clearly David Njoku here, where he was seeing 9 targets last week. Even saw 3 in the red zone on his way to finding a touchdown early in that game. Again, this week he finds himself in a matchup against the Pittsburgh Steelers, who've allowed 3 touchdowns to opposing tight ends over the last 3 weeks, before the bye week, of course. So over the last month, they've allowed 3 touchdowns to tight ends, namely 2 of them going to Hunter Henry and 1 going to AJ Barner. So David Njoku, I think, is probably the more talented of all the tight ends that this Pittsburgh Steelers team has played to this point in the season. So I think that he should continue to see plenty of attention in and around the red zone and end zone, and should have a good chance to at least get an opportunity to find pay dirt this week. So he should get the first shot to catch a pass in the red zone, possibly even the red zone. We just hope he can land that and find pay dirt for us, because this payout here at plus 475 is real nice for a guy like David Njoku, who has that big play upside. And we've loved to play a David Njoku when he's getting a lot of attention from his quarterback. So I like this matchup this week for David Njoku against Pittsburgh Steelers. And again, plus 475 on that anytime touchdown. Next, we've got Hunter Henry with an anytime touchdown at plus 170 this week. He plays the New Orleans Saints. Hunter Henry draws a matchup against a generous team here in the Saints, giving up 4 tight end touchdowns in the last 4 weeks. Almost any living, breathing tight end can score against this New Orleans Saints team, it seems like. It's a less tense matchup for the New England Patriots, which is going to kind of provide this team a little bit more flexibility in the pass game. They won't have to be so precise and crafty with how they gain yardage, as they kind of have had to be in the last couple of weeks playing Buffalo and a little bit in some tougher teams here. But now they get a bottom of the barrel matchup, and the New Orleans Saints, especially good defending the tight end, kind of one of their weaknesses here. And also, not to mention, in addition to that, Hunter Henry actually leads the team pretty handily in targets within the red zone, and he's got 7 of them on the year. The next highest target leader here is Demario Douglas with 4 targets, and I believe 3 of those came in week 1. So he is very handily the favorite target of Drake May when they get into scoring position. So already got a go-to guy who's been able to find the end zone, he's already found 2 touchdowns in a single game before, so that might even be worth a little bit of a sprinkle here. But I'm more concerned with just him finding the end zone the one time. And at plus 170, we've got some nice payout potential here for a Hunter Henry anytime touchdown. So in that favorable matchup, I'm loving this outlook for Hunter Henry this week. Now we've got Tucker Kraft, another tight end here, coming in at plus 175 for his anytime touchdown. He plays the Cincinnati Bengals this week, who now get a new quarterback this week in Joe Flacco after a recent trade, and they actually even announced that after having traded for him early in the week, he's actually going to go ahead and start this week. But that doesn't necessarily play into our Tucker Kraft anytime touchdown here, so I'll focus more on Tucker Kraft's outlook as it pertains to this matchup. It's shaping up to be a pretty solid week overall for tight ends, as I mentioned off the top. Kraft comes into this week with 2 touchdowns off of 5 red zone targets so far this season. Only Romeo Doubs has more targets with 6 and touchdowns with 4 on the season. Cincinnati pass defense is atrocious. Just the Cincinnati defense in general is awful. They leak yardage, they leak touchdowns, they just leak production to opposing offenses. They can pretty well score on the Cincinnati defense at will. Specifically to tight ends, they've given up 4 touchdowns in the last 4 weeks to the position. They let both the Detroit tight ends be in on the fun last week, where we saw Brock Wright and Sam Laporta both find pay dirt. Fresh off a bye, playing a terrible defense. So I think that this Cincinnati, fresh off a bye. I don't know where I was going with that. The Green Green Bay Packers are fresh off a bye. Sorry, lost my spot there for a sec, kind of where I was at. But yeah, Green Bay comes off a bye, so he's fresh. They should have had plenty of time to game plan for this. And Cincinnati is just kind of reeling right now, just trying to find any kind of traction, any sort of traction to kind of turn things around this year. So I think with some extra rest and already being kind of one of the favorites in the red zone, I think Tucker Kraft should have himself a day this year or this week. And at plus 175, I am in on an anytime touchdown for him. Next, we've got Ja'Marr Chase coming in at plus 190 for an anytime touchdown this week. Hear me out. I know this matchup is not looking all that great. I was just talking about how awful the Cincinnati Bengals are. That also carries into the offense. The offense has been awful, but with Joe Flacco now on the team, I know he hasn't had much time to practice and get to know these receivers, but when you have one of the best wide receivers in the game and arguably one of Joe Flacco's most talented wide receivers that he's had to be able to throw to, he's not quite had the kind of firepower at his disposal as he does now with Cincinnati. Yes, they have an awful offensive line, but they have an awful offensive line. But Joe Flacco is a smart quarterback. A veteran quarterback at 40 plus years old is going to kind of have little things that he's going to be able to do to be able to push the ball downfield. I'm not going to say that he's going to just completely come out and upset this Green Bay Packers team. Yes, he's already beat them with behind a bad offensive line already this season with the Cleveland Browns. It's not likely to happen again. I'm not going to say that he's just going to go out and crush his team. But again, he's got arguably the most talented wide receiver that he's had at his disposal so far in his career. For much of his career, Ja'Marr Chase is easily one of the top wide receivers in the league. It's not really going to matter what matchup we have here. I think that things are going to be able to work in the short term, and I just got a feeling that Joe Flacco is going to rely pretty heavily on Ja'Marr Chase in this week as he kind of gets used to the feel of the team, and he's just going to lean on the most talented guys in this one. And I feel like Ja'Marr Chase is going to find a way to get open. He's going to find a way to make plays and get this team downfield. It just feels really likely that Ja'Marr Chase is going to see a ton of attention. I think he could see 10 plus targets pretty easily. And after a couple of touchdowns last week, I feel pretty good about him being able to find pay dirt off a Joe Flacco touchdown this week. I'm really liking this position for Ja'Marr Chase with a far and away better quarterback. Not necessarily in a favorable matchup, but nobody's really going to shut down Ja'Marr Chase outside of Pat Surtain, especially on this Green Bay Packers team. So I think Ja'Marr Chase ought to be in a good position. And how often are we going to get Ja'Marr Chase anytime touchdown at plus 190? One of the best wide receivers in the game to score a touchdown at plus 190. Man, this is a good price here. So I like Ja'Marr Chase this week with Joe Flacco at quarterback. I think he relies on him pretty heavily in this one. Now we've got a Kansas City special this week. We're actually targeting this Detroit Lions secondary here if you want to get all of the latest and greatest as it relates to injuries. Go follow at the DGenDoc. That's Sebastian Fearon on Twitter. He has an injury report that comes out multiple times a day where he goes into detail about all of the important offensive and defensive players who are going to miss time or who are going to play this week. He's already shouted out all week long how this Detroit Lions secondary is beat up. They're not practicing. Brian Branch is about their only healthy one. Outside of Brian Branch, it's pretty much a bunch of bench players, a bunch of second, third string guys who are going to come in and guard these Kansas City wide receivers. So we're already coming into this matchup with a beat up secondary and one that actually even has been pretty generous the last several weeks, who've given up 6 touchdowns to opposing wide receivers in just the last 4 weeks. They've given up 3 in the last 2 weeks. So we already have a favorable matchup as it relates to wide receiver production coming in. Now you're down 2-3 starting defensive backs. This is spelling some fun for Patrick Mahomes. I think this Detroit-Kansas City game is going to be a fun one to watch. There should be plenty of scoring. I think Patrick Mahomes should be able to just kind of have his way in the passing game. So what does it look like for our touchdown prop options here? We've got Xavier Worthy at plus 145. Hollywood is listed at plus 245. Juju plus 285. And Tyquan Thornton at plus 265 here. So what about touchdowns and red zone usage for this Kansas City team. Well, Tyquan Thornton leads the team with 3 touchdowns, 2 in the red zone. So he's their big play guy who kind of just honestly, they've had a lot of success with some Tyquan Thornton so far this season. And not being the leading receiver, but the leading big play artist on this team, he's really been able to kind of find a groove here on this Kansas City team, and Patrick Mahomes seems to like him as well. So then we kind of go down to Juju Smith-Schuster, who actually leads the team with 6 red zone targets so far this season. Marquise Brown is second in targets in the red zone with 5 targets. He's got 3 catches, or Juju and Marquise Brown have 3 catches each of those 5 and 6 targets to go with 1 touchdown apiece so far this season. So now if we want to talk about Xavier Worthy is going to kind of have to create his own. He doesn't really get a whole lot of usage within the red zone, but his plays are going to come with those bombs downfield or some creativity coming from the coaching staff to deploy Xavier Worthy. He's going to have to work a little bit harder to get those touchdowns, but he's going to get a lot of attention in the open field, and he's a fast enough player that if he can find a seam or find an opening, he could break off a big play and find pay dirt himself. But I'm more honed in on these bigger payouts, a Tyquan Thornton, a Juju. You could probably throw a unit on either one of those, and you might just find that you hit on both of them. Because Juju, again, leading this team in red zone targets. The closer they get to the end zone, the more attention Juju sees. And they just have so much talent here, so many guys who can kind of make things happen and make plays in big situations, and Patrick Mahomes likes to spread it out pretty evenly. So I think with Patrick Mahomes having a favorable matchup for in the passing game, I like Tyquan Thornton to make a big play and find the end zone. Juju Smith-Schuster is a kind of a go-to guy here in the end zone as well when they get in close. I'm not really worried about running backs vulturing too much. They haven't used a whole lot of the running game in close. It's been a lot of passing. So we've got plenty of good prices here for Hollywood, Juju Smith-Schuster, Tyquan Thornton. Take your pick of one or two of those guys or something. You could probably, if you're going to play the larger payouts, you could probably put your money down on a couple of them and still become profitable. So at plus 285, plus 265, and plus 245 for Hollywood, Juju, and Tyquan Thornton, this ought to be a prime spot for one or more of these guys to find the end zone this week. So I love this matchup for Kansas City wide receivers and Patrick Mahomes and the passing game. This should be a pretty back and forth affair. Detroit, even though they are down an offensive tackle and some defenders, their offense has a lot of good players. It's going to be pretty back and forth. I think this is going to be a great game for both sides of the ball, in all honesty, because no matter what on Detroit's side, they like to spread the ball around as well. But here it's a little bit more concentrated, where Kansas City really just heavily relies on the pass catchers to find the end zone. They're not really as worried about their rushing game because they've got one of the best quarterbacks in the league. So this KC special, pick one of your favorite targets here for Kansas City wide receivers, because they are all in an outstanding spot this week against a beat up Detroit secondary. So let's recap. Off the top, we had Tetairoa McMillan for an anytime touchdown at plus 140. This week he plays the Dallas Cowboys. We've got David Njoku at plus 475 against the Steelers. Hunter Henry at plus 170 against the New Orleans Saints. Tucker Kraft at plus 175 this week against the Cincinnati Bengals. Jamar Chase at plus 190 versus the Green Bay Packers. And then we've got the KC special where Juju, Hollywood, Tyquan, and Xavier Worthy are all playing a beat-up Detroit secondary, so Kansas City should have their way. So that's going to do it for this week, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. If you've been here before, thank you for coming back each and every week. If you're new here, go ahead and smash that like and subscribe button so you don't miss another video. If you like what I have to say, let me know in the comments. So again, on Twitter, you can find me at Axman IDP. Follow Sebastian Fearon at the DGenDoc and check out his injury reports each and every week. That will help to go towards. That will help you kind of craft some props to target some favorable matchups where guys are down or guys are going to get some more opportunity. Go ahead and follow him. He does a great job of kind of listing things out and kind of spelling out the important pieces who are going to be down are going to be back in action this week, or any given week for that matter. So thanks again, everybody, and good luck this week in your betting in your betting props. Hopefully you guys can come away this Sunday with some extra cash in your pocket, take those significant others out, or maybe get them a nice gift here. So thanks again, everybody, and we'll see you back next week for another edition of the Touchdown Prop Show.